Hello, everybody. I am Jess Arce. I am the owner and director of 3D Learning Experts. We specialize in helping students of all ages who are struggling with reading, spelling, writing, and math due to dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and similar brain-based learning challenges. And I am excited that you have joined me today for Q&A. This month, October, is Dyslexia Awareness Month. And so I wanted to take the time to answer any questions people have about dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and just anything related to that. So I'm glad to see there are a couple of people here. If you could type in the on the page, hi or live. And if you're watching the replay, type hashtag replay. That would be great. Then I know who's watching. And also it helps our algorithm so that more people can see and learn about dyslexia, dysgraphia, or dyscalculia. So also you can type your questions in the chat. I am using a platform that I have never used before. So hopefully I can see the questions easily enough. I'm not exactly sure where the questions will appear, but I've got some questions already that people sent over. So we're going to be starting off with those. The first question is from Susan G. And she said she's brand new to this world. Welcome. And she suspects that her 10-year-old daughter has all three: dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. And she said that her father is undiagnosed and works extra hard to hide his struggles. He was in says 6 years of struggling in public school. She's exhausted trying to get help and direction, and she has a master's in education and says help. You know, she's got two questions here. Before I even go to the questions, I just like to say that I understand how you feel. I am a mom of kids with dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and about 6 other neurodiversities. And when my daughter was in preschool, I noticed something different about her because I was a preschool teacher. However, I wasn't sure what it was. None of the teachers knew. My mom, who was also a teacher, had no clue. So it was almost 10 years that I was on a journey to figure out why my daughter couldn't spell the word like cat. So you're not alone. You know, a lot of teachers don't know what dyslexia looks like. My mother, like I said, was a teacher, and she was diagnosed with dyslexia in the 40s, which is not very common. She knew she was dyslexic my whole life, didn't know I was dyslexic, and could not help me identify my daughter as dyslexic. However, once you know what dyslexia looks like, it's really easy to spot. And so we moved to Texas, and we had only been there 1 week when my daughter's teacher identified it was dyslexia and said, we can't test her until the end of the school year, get her an ARD, an ARD, that's an IEP for the rest of the country, get her one for ADHD, and then at the end of the year, you can get her tested. So that's a very common thing. And one of my goals is to educate teachers and parents as to what dyslexia is, because if we can tell what the signs are a lot sooner, we can help our kids a lot sooner. So let me go back to Susan's question. Her first question is, what or how do I get the school to test her when they claim she's functioning low for fluency, but good enough to be slipped over? So every state is going to be different about their testing. However, in my experience, you have to ask the school to test. They will not offer to do a test in most states especially California, if you do not request that from your child's teacher. And I have lots of experience in the homeschool world or the homeschool charter world, which is what California, a lot of students do. And you definitely have to ask, because teachers are not allowed to suggest that perhaps your child has a learning challenge in fear of being sued. And so sometimes you have to ask more than once. I just talked to a grandma last week, and she said that the school, she asked them, she had some concerns, and she said that the school talked about her concerns with her, but they didn't do anything about it. So I told her, you need to get something in writing. You need to request it and then follow up with an email, because then they are going to be legally obligated to start doing something within a certain time frame. And I believe the time frame is 90 or 120 days. Don't hold me to it. And that could vary from state to state, although I think that's federal. So you definitely want to ask, and then they will have, once it's in writing, they will be legally obligated to get started on the IEP, or in Texas, the ARD process. And now them saying that she's not low enough to receive services, that can happen. That happened with my second youngest child. And so I ended up having to get a 504 in place, and the schools had no clue what a 504 was. So I had to educate them as to what a 504 was. And 504s are not as inclusive as an IEP or an ARD. However, they are helpful for things like accommodations and testing, and they can. And 504 was actually created for employees, for adults, so they can stay with your child for the 504 can stay with your child for the rest of their life, versus the IEP is only good through elementary school through high school, and it needs to be redone every 3 years. Once they get to college, they can no longer use their IEP. They can show the IEP at college, but that's it, because colleges don't use IEPs. Then at that point, you're going through special ed services at the school. And a 504, my understanding is it can follow them through life. It can be adjusted as needed for the professional world versus the educational world. So if your daughter does not qualify for an IEP, that's what you want to do. You want to start working on a 504. Oh, and the next question. I see the word numbers 504. Okay, so what tutoring is truly worth the investment, as they all cost a fortune? By law, with her 504, doesn't the public school have to provide her help? She's falling through the cracks. Okay, so I'm going to start with the second part of that question first. No, by law, the school does not have to provide her help for a 504. 504s are more accommodations. So the school needs to provide her accommodations, but they don't have to provide services. So if she has an IEP or an ARD, they have to provide services. However, the way the law is written, they don't have to provide they don't have to provide the best and highest services that a parent would like for their child. They just have to provide services. So very often, a dyslexic student in the public school system does not receive the best services or the right services even. They may just be pulled out and go into a classroom that's reading intervention. And it's not reading intervention for someone with a dyslexia, which is quite different than the reading intervention for someone who is struggling with reading because they are, you know what, I don't even want to say the wrong politically correct word, but because they're not dyslexic. Like they have different kind of reading, like the remedial reading, which will work for someone who's not dyslexic, but typically those are people with lower IQs, and dyslexic people tend to have average or above average IQs. So they're going to need an Orton Gillingham based type of instruction. And although more and more schools are starting to offer that, they don't all offer that at this time. My kids had Orton Gillingham based instruction when we lived in Texas. My kids were pulled out of school during their language arts class time, and they went to a small group dyslexia instruction class with a trained dyslexia teacher. And it still wasn't the best and highest. It was amazing compared to what they had before when they weren't receiving any intervention. However, it wasn't nearly as good as when I started tutoring my own son one-on-one. So best and highest is not required by law. That's something to keep in mind. Parents often don't realize that. And so going back to your question, your first part of the second question, what tutoring is truly worth the investment, as they all cost a fortune? My tutoring company, we tutor specifically dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. And that is worth the investment, because your child is going to leave our tutoring program being able to read, being able to spell much better, having better comprehension, having better memory. Everything is going to be improved because it's one-on-one, it's structured, it's specific for your daughter's needs. And so I guarantee that at the end of our program, your child will be reading on at least an 8th grade reading level. But most of our students leave us at the end of if they complete the program, they leave us reading on an 11th grade reading level, which is higher than what the average American graduates high school reading on. So, yeah, I love that question. And the answer is 3D learning experts is truly worth the investment. And Susan, please schedule a consultation call with me so that you can learn more about our tutoring program and why it will work for your daughter when nothing else has. Because I paid teachers to tutor my daughter after school for 4 years, I think, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 3 years. And none of it helped, because she was being taught the exact same way after school that they were teaching her in school all day long. And that's not what she needed. She needed the proper Orton Gillingham based intervention. So on to the next question from Rosa L, or Rosa. And it says, my granddaughter has had learning disability testing done, and it says she has dyslexia, but says nothing about dysgraphia or dyscalculia. She scores way below average in math, reading, and writing, though. What can I ask for in her IEP meeting to get her the help she needs? I almost cried reading this report. Well, in my experience, schools don't test for dysgraphia or dyscalculia. And so right there, that's the first challenge. My second youngest, like I said, didn't qualify for an IEP, didn't have severe dyslexia, just mild, moderate dyslexia. However, has profoundly severe dysgraphia, like could not write papers without my assistance all through middle school and high school. However, on the test that they give, they only have them write a little paragraph. Well, that isn't realistic to what is expected of a 7th grader. So, that's not really getting a really clear understanding. And very often, dyslexic people will test better on the reading portion as well, because they can get the contextual clues and figure out the answers to what the reading is asking as well. So you can, for an IEP, I don't know what the school is going to be willing to do. You can ask them to do a math intervention. You can ask them to facilitate with some writing. That I don't really have much experience with the IEP world on, because my 2 kids that were diagnosed with dyslexia weren't identified either. And it wasn't until I started homeschooling my kids that I realized that they had more going on than just the dyslexia. So we can help with the math challenges. We teach our students math in a way that they understand. It's multisensory. Even though it's online, they are using math manipulatives and very successfully. So that is an option. For dysgraphia, I highly recommend a program called Nope, that's not it. Handwriting Without Tears. You can buy that book. It's like $10, $12. And it's a book where they will practice their writing skills if it's handwriting, if that's the dysgraphia portion that you're concerned with. If it's like getting the thoughts from their brain onto paper, we actually also have a writing program that is amazing. It helps with note taking. It helps with the ability to really formulate your thoughts better and get them down on paper. You could ask for accommodations, and that is something that you might have more success with. For math, one of the big tools that really worked for my daughter was they blew up her math problems on the page. So she only had like 6 math problems, and she had like 3 pages of math instead of 1 page of 18 problems. And that was less intimidating for her. Another thing is to teach math differently. We use a touch point math for addition and subtraction. I actually created the touch point that we use based on another program that exists, but I don't feel is ideal for the dyslexic person or a person with dyscalculia. And I'm happy to share that with you. You can just request it and we can send it to you via email. And also colored paper can be really helpful if they have scotopic syndrome, which is really common for students with the 3Ds or any of the Ds. Scotopic syndrome is where sometimes people will talk about words moving on the paper, they're seeing double, it's not clear, all of those things. It's also called Erlin syndrome. You can go to erlin.com and get access to that. And then for math, we use Times Tales, and we can put a link, share a link with you to Times Tales so that you can access, you can purchase that. And I also have a program where I teach how we use the Times Tales program, because we don't use it in the traditional sense. One of the things to remember is repetition is key for our kind of learner. Also, if you would like a list of accommodations, we have that for dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia, each one separate. So just let us know which list you would like. and we can send you that. And let me see if my assistant can put in the chat our code for the Times Tales, because if you don't mind using our link, we get a little bit of a affiliate payment, and we'd really appreciate that, since we are trying to help you help yourself, it would help us. Okay. All right, let's see if there's any questions. Okay, I see something in the chat. Oh, hola and bonsoir. Okay, Angie is live, and no questions in there though. All right, so I will go on with our next question that we have here. And the next one is from a teacher. How can I help educate other teachers and parents with children who are struggling but don't know these learning disabilities? That's a great question. I actually did my first, what is it called? Convention. I spoke at my first convention because I wanted to help parents of homeschoolers who didn't know their kids were dyslexic. And I noticed a lot of the kids in California, when we moved to California, in the homeschool communities, kids were dyslexic. So, sometimes parents don't really want to hear their kids are struggling. And so it's hard. And that's one reason I think why teachers are discouraged from telling parents that their children could have these problems, because the parents don't want to hear that. They just want to hear that the teacher is going to fix whatever the problem is and brush it under the rug. A lot of parents are embarrassed. We have our children. We want them to be perfect. They're not necessarily going to be perfect, but that's our hopes, our vision. And so talking to parents can be a little tricky. I guess the first thing to say is, are you open to me sharing my thoughts, and let them give you permission to share what you have observed? And I don't remember what my daughter's teacher said. It was so many years ago, but I was so grateful to have her say something right off the bat the first week of school, or after 1 week of school, because we had been searching for answers for so long. So, you could recommend that they look at the checklist. We have a checklist that we can provide you with to share with them, and see if they see any signs in their child or any family members. That could be a good way of getting the conversation started. If they do see signs, you can send them our way and have a free consultation call. You can let them know that you have noticed some of the signs in the child, and would they be open to exploring that, because you would like to see their child succeed. As far as educators learning more about dyslexia, honestly, our checklist is a great place to start, because if you have that checklist and you see signs in your students, that's pretty much um, that pretty much shows if it's dyslexia. I listen to parents talk on my consultation call, and it's very clear to me whether or not it's dyslexia or not. A lot of times I can steer parents to the direction they need to go if it's not dyslexia, because like I said, my kids have like a total of 9 neurodiversities. So I'm quite familiar with all 9 neurodiversities. I am an expert in dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. However, I have a lot of experience and knowledge with ADHD, ADD, which is now just labeled ADHD, autism, schizotopic syndrome, sensory processing disorder, auditory processing disorder. And so those visual processing disorder, those are things where I can steer you in the right direction if it sounds more like those are the only challenges and it's not dyslexia or dysgraphia. But teachers, yeah, just if you don't have a lot of exposure to it at your school, if you just, like I said, just quickly go through our checklist, that can really help. We have a lot of videos on YouTube that talk about the signs of dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. You can listen to them or our podcast while you're doing something else and just absorb the information. Because once you know what the signs of dyslexia are, they're much easier to identify. And my daughter's teacher knew what the signs were because that school district in Texas educated their teachers as to what dyslexia is. So that is all we have time for today. We're going to do another live next week to close out Dyslexia Awareness Month. So please feel free to send me messages with your questions or join in live and type up your question. But hey, dyslexia is hereditary. So parents are going to, at least mom or dad is going to be the link for the child's dyslexia. So I understand if writing is a challenge for you. It's a challenge for me. I mean, I can do it, but I get tired writing. So if you'd rather just hop on and tell us, or you want to call us and tell us your question, that's quite all right too. And Angie, if you wouldn't mind putting our contact information on the page, that would be awesome, so that we could be able to assist parents if they wanted to give us a call. And I guess that's it for now. Again, if you liked what you heard, we're on YouTube. We're on all the major streaming for podcasts. You can listen to our podcasts. You can watch our YouTube videos, and please subscribe, because that helps us know that there's value in what I'm sharing. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week.